On Tech News Today, it looks like Ashley Madison was involved in some hacking of its own. Plus, HTC's next phone looks way too much like the iPhone. And a Dutch artist shows us the invisible world of Wi-Fi. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, August 25th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send you all the ingredients to cook fresh, delicious meals with simple step-by-step instructions right to your door. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 2 meals free by going to blueapron.com/twit. That's blueapron.com/twit. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news of the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan. Welcome to the show. Our co-anchor today is After Nine's content czar, Joe Panettieri. Hey, Joe, how you doing today?
Mike, as usual, I'm doing great. How you been?
I've been great. Thank you so much. We were talking about beer and coffee before the show, but this show is not about things you drink necessarily anymore. This show is about technology. So why don't we jump right into the chat room's going nuts over there. Let's jump right into the news. We've been telling you about the Ashley Madison hack since that story broke, and now Wired and others are reporting that the company's former CTO, whose name is Raja Bhatia, may have hacked a competing dating site. A leaked email exchange from November of 2012 has Bhatia telling Avid Life Media, that Avid Life Media owns Ashley Madison, the CTO, Noel Biderman, and others in the company that he found a way to hack Nerve.com and copy that company's database, or at least modify it. Note that at the time of the email, Bhatia was not working for Avid. He was already a former employee. He had left some 2 years before that. And Joe Panettieri, this is all around the context of a possible acquisition of Nerve. They had been approached by Nerve, and then this former CTO, the founding CTO, in fact, came back to the sort of executives at the company and said, hey, you know, these folks have lousy security. And in this exchange, it also emerged, hey, you know what? We have pretty lousy security too here at Ashley Madison.
Yeah, you know, talk about redefining the term due diligence. The story, Mike, ahead of the show, you were saying this story is the gift that just keeps on giving. And with all these hacks now, yes, identity information comes out, security information comes out, but ultimately what really comes out are the private conversations that people really regret once they become publicly known.
That's absolutely true. And, you know, we've, and I hope you appreciate this, folks, but we have been navigating through all the little sub-stories associated with Ashley Madison, some of which are very salacious, some of which are just celebrity gossip type things, other of which are sensational in one way or another. We have been focusing on the tech-related stories, the ones that are related to privacy, your data, who you can trust, how you can trust these companies, and so on. And we have avoided all of the other stories that have come out. You are welcome. Got more news coming up, but first let's talk about delicious food. Blue Apron is one of our sponsors today. And, you know, you might be tempted to think, you know, we're tired, we don't have time to cook. It's like, you know, let's go out to dinner. Well, that is the wrong answer because Blue Apron takes only a half an hour to prepare. There is no way you're going to be eating within a half an hour once you decide to go out to a restaurant. You got to drive to the restaurant. You have to wait for a table. You have to sit down, wait for the waiter. I don't know why they call the waiter a waiter. You're the one waiting. With Blue Apron, you don't have to wait. You just get going on that meal and start cooking. It's less than $10 per meal. Each meal is 500, 700 calories, so it's also not unhealthy. It's very healthy, in fact. They're fresh ingredients, seasonal ingredients, and so you're always eating within season, which is always a good idea. And it's great for people who want to be great cooks but aren't, like myself. It makes you feel like a great cook. And, of course, if you do cook great food with Blue Apron, you're a great cook. You're cooking great food. And it's just they have these cards that come with the food that, you know, you get this big box. I got one coming today, in fact. And the cards have these really beautiful, simple step-by-step instructions that show you photos of exactly what's going on at that point in the instructions. And they say, okay, now do this, do that. And you're preparing the main dish and the side dishes and whatever else is involved in this meal all at the same time, essentially reusing certain ingredients. There are many recipes, for example, where you use some grated parts of the skin of a lime for one dish. You squeeze half of it and use the juice for another side dish, and then you use the remaining wedges for yet another part of the dish. It's really brilliantly engineered. Just from a food nerd point of view, this is really elegantly designed food menu creation. It's really awesome. Blue Apron's experts source only the best seasonal ingredients for incredible meals like fresh lemon linguine with summer vegetable sauce and ricotta, or Thai chicken burgers with hoisin, mayo, and roasted potato wedges. You didn't see chicken burgers coming, did you? They have all kinds of really creative, interesting meals like that you would never think of to make on your own without Blue Apron's help. You got this whole army of chefs and food experts behind you with every single meal. Blue Apron is simply a better way to cook. Check out this week's menu and get your first 2 meals free by going to blueapron.com/twit. That's right, 2 free meals just by going to blueapron.com/twit. And we thank Blue Apron for their support of Tech News Today, and I thank them for all the great food. Well, let's jump to our next story. We told you yesterday about how Apple CEO, he's been promoted to CEO, Tim Cook emailed TV's Mad Money host Jim Cramer, assuring him that Apple is doing just fine in China. Thank you very much. The move seemed to have had the desired effect. Apple's stock stopped its slide, and in fact, some are crediting him with the stopping of the slide of the whole market. There's just one problem. Tim Cook's email may have been a violation of SEC rules. Jennifer Booton is a tech reporter for MarketWatch and joins us now. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Now, Cook is being accused of, by some, not everybody, of violating the Security and Exchange Commission's fair disclosure regulation. What is that rule, and why does it exist? What is the purpose of this rule?
Sure. It determines the whole creation of the rule is to make sure people didn't unfairly disclose material information about a company, material non-public information about a company. So the whole reason it was designed was so that, certain people couldn't trade on information that wasn't fairly disseminated across a very broad public. In this case, it was sent via private email to Jim Cramer. The only problem is, yes, he's a media personality, and yes, the media does have certain exclusions from this regulation, but he also is associated with a fund that is long on Apple.
Hey, Jennifer, quick question for you. As we're talking about this as a quote-unquote private email, was there any indication that this email truly was private, meant to be, a one-to-one conversation? And does it even matter? Can Cook be doing things like this?
I reached out to CNBC to ask them for an exact timeline of everything. I also wanted to see the exact email exchange to know how all of this went down, just because it is a murky situation with his association with both as someone who gives financial advice, though he's not a registered financial advisor, and is associated with this fund. And they haven't gotten back to me yet. But I think that it does matter in the sense that, yes, of course, the media is exempt from it, but it just it's an interesting line to walk when there are certain disclosure rules that you have to follow as a public company, and Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world, and it obviously is aware of these rules. And under those same guidelines, you do have kind of this 24-hour period of leniency where if you didn't mean to disclose something, you can then file an EK or do something that kind of broadly disseminates it. So it's tricky because, yes, it went on CNBC shortly after the email was sent, and then it was tweeted shortly after, and then everybody picked it up. So it was eventually broadly disseminated, but it is that kind of, the lawyers are questioning, the kind of timeline of it and whether it was fair.
Some people are calling it a rookie mistake, which is something I doubt. He's not a rookie. He's a very careful person, and it was directed very carefully at a specific type of person who could make this public. And if, in fact, they did move the market, if, in fact, he did affect Apple stock and the slide thereof, how does that compare to the potential penalty if there is, in fact, a financial penalty? In other words, why not do this? I mean, they're not, Apple's stock moved by billions of dollars. They're not going to fine Apple billions of dollars. What's the penalty for this?
Sure, and just to add to that, I think what has caused people to question this is because it was such a volatile day yesterday. It was the most volatile trading day of the year. So for this to come out right before the market opened, it wasn't a rookie mistake. It was an intentional email. And I think if the SEC did have a problem with it, you know, it's too early to say. Other cases, Reed Hastings, for example, got a lot of heat when he posted user growth on Facebook, and then the SEC ended up investigating that and coming out with a determination that it was okay to post on social media. So there's a very good chance that the SEC won't do anything. There's a chance that they'll come out and say, you know what, it's okay that he did this. He's media, it's disclosed, no big deal. Or there's a chance that it could be a fine.
Well, now you wrote that Kramer co-manages a portfolio called Action Alerts Plus, which I've never heard of, but this invests in Apple. Is there an issue regarding the fact that Kramer is theoretically an investor in Apple and also speaks publicly in a way that can influence Apple's stock price one way or the other? Is it an issue either for Cook or Kramer that Kramer is theoretically an investor in Apple?
Right. Well, Kramer does claim to be an investor in Apple, and his fund does claim to be long as well. And in fact, there was just a long article posted about a week and a half ago to TheStreet.com, which he owns, Kramer, touting the benefits of both Apple and its growth in China. So it's, you know, it is a tricky situation because there are, of course, investors all the time come out and talk about the companies that they own. We have Chris Sacca from Twitter. Icon comments on every single company that he owns. It's just a careful line when it's a actual disclosure and then, you know, trying to analyze between, you know, the guidelines of him as a reporter versus him as an investor and also as a potential portfolio manager given his association with that fund. And that he doesn't actually, there is somebody who actually manages the fund, so he doesn't directly do that, but he does get royalties based on the newsletter that comes out with the fund. So it's just a very murky gray area all in all.
It is very murky and very gray. And, you know, I personally don't invest in tech stocks and never have because I'm in a position to influence people's views about products and technology. And maybe I'm a sucker. Maybe I should change my ways. I'll send an email to Jim Cramer and see what he thinks.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Jennifer Booton is at marketwatch.com and on Twitter at jbooton. That's Booton. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
All right. A federal appeals court ruled yesterday that the Federal Trade Commission can sue companies when their security sucks. Katie Beau Williams is a reporter for The Hill and joins us now. Katie Beau Williams, how are you doing today?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Now, can you tell us a little about the case that brought about this ruling? It's kind of an interesting turn of events in light of the Ashley Madison and other hacks that have happened recently.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so the case actually centers around Wyndham Hotels. So that's brands like Days Inn, Howard Johnson, the Ramada, Super 8, Travelodge. So this huge company in 2008 and 2009 suffered 3 major breaches. They had credit card information stolen for over 600,000 customers. So this is a lot of people, and that's a theft that led to almost $11 million in fraudulent charges. So in 2012, the FTC sued Wyndham for basically failing to protect its customer data, doing things like not encrypting their data, using easy-to-guess passwords, that kind of thing. Basically, not normal industry standards for rigorous cybersecurity. Wyndham said this was an overreach, basically that the FTC doesn't have the authority to bring enforcement action against companies that don't adequately protect against cyber threats. But a U.S. district judge in New Jersey let the case proceed, and yesterday the appeals court affirmed that decision. So what this does in the short term is give the FTC permission to proceed with the lawsuit. It doesn't necessarily prove any of the allegations that the FTC has leveled against Wyndham.
Hey, Katie, what's the FTC's view on employees of a company? Like, if we were to rewind, for instance, to the Sony hack, there are a lot of employees who were hit by that sort of say. Would the employees somehow be defended by the FTC going forward if the FTC were to win this case? Could they somehow influence and or protect the employees of a company that's victimized?
I mean, probably technically, but you know, an FTC action is pretty unlikely to sort of directly take action on behalf of employees, since employees have kind of other more efficient mechanisms of redress. So those cases are kind of more likely to be resolved through civil litigation. The more I think, appropriate hack rather than Sony to compare this to is, as you said earlier, the Ashley Madison hack, in which huge amounts of personal data for clients are revealed to the internet.
Now, is this a victory, political or otherwise, for President Obama?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think it is. Cybersecurity is obviously a big priority for the White House, but the president actually talked about the FTC's authority in his State of the Union in January. He suggested broadening FTC authority to allow it to set cybersecurity standards that companies would be required to meet. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's fair to say that this is pretty in line with the direction the president is pushing for.
Hey, Katie, could this potentially backfire for the president, though? Because you think of something like the Office of Personnel Management and the massive hacks that have happened within the U.S. government networks. Is the FTC now going to go investigate what happened with a government network and then hold the government responsible?
Well, it's a little bit different because, as a practical matter, government agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services or the VA, like they're being audited as a matter of public record. So whereas private companies like Wyndham and Ashley Madison, the FTC isn't necessarily going to know that a company is doing a crappy job at cyber unless a breach happens. So that's a little bit comparing apples to oranges, I think.
This whole thing kind of makes me a little queasy because it sort of opens up this new can of worms. For example, what are the standards for an adequately protected corporation? Is this something that the FTC is going to be defining and enforcing? I mean, that kind of freaks me out. The other thing is that, what about a company that hasn't been hacked but still has lousy security? Let's say there's a complaint to the FTC from an employee or a partner or somebody. Will they be able to crack down or sue companies that haven't been breached?
As to whether they're going to be able to go after companies that haven't been breached, I think it's a little early to say that. I think we kind of don't know. But again, I think that's pretty unlikely because, as I said, unless somebody kind of goes out of their way to file a report, the FTC isn't necessarily going to know that, you guys aren't encrypting your data, you're doing a bad job of it. As to setting the standards, that's actually one of the biggest criticisms that's been leveled against the agency. So Wyndham actually, in its case, tried to argue that the FTC hasn't actually really set very clear standards in terms of what appropriate cybersecurity is. And because of that, it's pretty unfair that they should sort of be punished for that. But, the other side of that argument is in a cybersecurity environment that's sort of changing every day. There's different threats coming on board every day. Reasonable precautions as a standard, may be the most accurate standard that they can set.
Well, you guys at The Hill do a great job, I think. And, there are areas where you go into the world of policy relating to technology and privacy and all the rest. And I get a lot out of what you guys write. What is your specialty there at The Hill, Katie?
Cybersecurity, as a matter of fact, as of about 2 weeks ago.
So we'll be having you back on the show. Katie Beau Williams willing. I'll be inviting you again. Thank you so much. And Katie Beau Williams is at thehill.com and on Twitter at Katie Beau Will. Thank you so much for joining us today, Katie.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Microsoft has invented a keyboard cover for the Surface tablet that has a built-in e-ink touchscreen display. It's kind of like a strip of gray above the keyboard that provides another user interface for the device. Billy Steele is the associate editor for Engadget and joins us now. Hey, Billy, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. By the way, I love your Twitter profile photo of you smoking the pipe. It's very distinguished. Like that a lot. Now, Billy, what's the purpose of this display? What can it be used for?
So it can be used for a couple different things. Mostly, it is to expand the limited screen real estate that a tablet has to offer. So in the video that Microsoft posted along with a brief description of the display cover, they have it set up as a tray for app shortcuts. They use it to, as you see in the video now, type an email during a video chat. They also use it to sign documents. In Photoshop, it can be used to dock the tool palette when you're using a stylus. and easy access. You don't have to swipe over or hit a button to bring up those tools. They're already there just below the display. So basically, it's adding a bit more screen real estate and making your use of a Surface tablet more efficient.
And Billy, just to reiterate, this is actually built in to the touchscreen display?
It's built into the keyboard case. So if you've seen like a Bluetooth keyboard case for an iPad or something like that, it's basically docked just above the keys. So it's down below the main display itself. And something that should be stated here is that it's very much a prototype. As you can see in the video, there's wires coming off of it and all kinds of things plugged into it to make it work at this point. But what is really interesting is Microsoft Applied Sciences is one R&D lab, I guess you could describe it, for Microsoft that works on projects like this. And while we may never see it in an actual Surface accessory, it's interesting to see how companies like Microsoft are sort of addressing ongoing criticism as they continue to make products like the Surface be able to do more things like a laptop can and replace a laptop, move closer to replacing a laptop, I should say. That they're still looking for ways to make more efficient use of screen real estate, to make your workflow easier, and basically just to improve how you work on the go.
There have been a lot of companies that have been using e-ink displays, which of course are very low power. They're not particularly high res. They're not colorful, but they are very low power for a variety of purposes, like the Yoda phone. It's a Russian phone that you can write on the back with e-ink, and on the front it's like a regular phone. Is there any indication that consumers are loving this technology? Are there any devices besides e-book readers that have really taken off because they have this low power display technology?
For the most part, it's been e-readers. I think Sony came out with a legal pad size tablet that was targeted at lawyers and folks who work in that field. But for the most part, it's been e-readers. But like you mentioned, the displays are low power compared to a full color or high resolution touchscreen. So for accessories like a keyboard case that needs to be charged separately most of the time from the tablet itself, it doesn't take up too much of that extra battery that's needed to connect to the tablet, but it still offers enough resolution to give you the touch interface and the ability to scribble or draw with a stylus.
All right, so I'm going to let you be the prognosticator. Is this thing going to ship, or are they going to just keep it in the lab?
Honestly, it's really hard to tell. It looks very unfinished at this point, and that's not to say that it won't ever be made into a finished product. I think that it could be really interesting. I know Intel has done some laptop prototypes where you close the laptop and there's a touchscreen on the outside of the closed lid that still gives you access to email and things like that. So the ability to expand the tablet's limited screen real estate just a little bit with an app tray or somewhere where you can sign documents or even swipe to navigate without reaching up to the main display itself is very interesting.
It certainly is. And, I think that at some point, though, somebody should just make a tablet, just a simple sheet of glass, because they're getting so complicated, although I'm a hypocrite in that regard. I use a keyboard with my iPad all the time, so it's a very useful, I guess, to have extra stuff. And if you can have a keyboard, you might as well have a really good keyboard. So Billy Steele's at Engadget.com and on Twitter at WMSteele with an E on the end. Billy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. In product update news, Twitter today announced that it's rolling out a new feature that enables pop-up desktop notifications when you get a direct message. The company also made some minor interface tweaks to its Android app. Joe Panettieri, is this a good thing or a bad thing to be notified when somebody sends you a DM.
I like it. I definitely like it. And the other thing with Twitter is it's good to see, I don't want to use the word innovation, but let's say enhancements or new features continuing to come out, even as they have had a lot of musical chairs going on with their executive leadership. So it's good to see the R&D continuing. And
they recently opened up DMs to include people who you aren't necessarily following. And that's been a mixed bag in my opinion. I mean, I like it when other people do it. So if I'm not following them, I can DM them. I like that. Although I'm getting a little bit of spam, it's not too bad. And so that's kind of a mixed bag. The combination of the fact that people can send you, you know, people who you're not following can send you DMs on the one hand and notification on the other could be a problem for some people. I think for most it probably won't. It's probably a good feature. Well, Steve Hemmerstoffer posted leaked photos of the upcoming HTC Aero smartphone. And it's a blatant copy of the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, according to some people who are complaining about it online. It has iPhone-like curves and changes to its camera that look kind of like the iPhone, and it even has those ugly white lines in the back, just like the latest iPhones, although, in fairness, HTC had ugly white lines before iPhone did. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Greg is holding up his HTC One with ugly lines, although those aren't white lines. They're gray lines. Splitting hairs. Still... It kind of, yeah, space gray. Thank you. We got so much help in this brick house here. Yeah, but it's like it's problematic if they're trying to look like the iPhone as a desperate attempt to boost their market share, etc. Joe, what do you think? Are they really trying to copy the iPhone here? Or is this just a coincidence?
I think it's more than coincidence. But the good news is Apple will probably do something new in September, won't they? So.
Yeah, it'll be an iPhone. It'll be a 6S that'll look exactly like the 6. All right, well, in other research and development news, Microsoft research eggheads have created an iPhone app, an iPhone app, that uses the built-in camera to scan 3D objects for printing, for 3D printing, and also for augmented reality. The app is called Mobile Fusion, and you use it by pointing your iPhone at a 3D object and going around and around it until the entire surface has been mapped. The app will then convert that into the instructions for a 3D printer to print a copy of that object. Now, they're using a technology called stereo matching. They're estimating depth based on comparison of the photos. So as you're going around this 3D object, you're taking multiple photos and looks at one and looks at the other and sees how they're different. And it figures out what the depth is, what the distances are between you and the different surfaces of this 3D object. Now, Microsoft hasn't decided yet whether to make the app available to the public. But, Joe, this reminds me of something that Microsoft did recently, which is that Google Now came out with Google Now on Tap, which requires developers to explicitly support it. And then Microsoft came along and said, oh, well, we have a version that does pretty much all of that without the necessity for developers to support it. Now, Google had this really sophisticated technology in Project Tango, which uses special electronics and stuff. And now Microsoft's coming along and saying, well, we can do most of that without any special equipment. It seems like they have a lot of stuff going on in the labs where they're doing things with off-the-shelf parts that other companies, especially Google, are using. You know, they're doing a more complicated version of it.
You know, it's so nice to be talking about Microsoft and innovation again. You know, without always talking about Windows and/or Office in the sentence. So yeah, and I think Microsoft and their approach to open source in particular has been impressive. I don't know if there's open source in this particular software project, but I would guess that some of the algorithms they're using and some of that depth perception technology was not homegrown at all. It was actually something they're leveraging and stitching together into an app. So it's good to see this coming out of Microsoft. And frankly, I hate to sound shameless, but I'm really psyched by this app. This one sounds like a really cool app.
Yeah, it really does. And it has to be said that Microsoft has been, Microsoft Research has been extremely innovative for years, for a couple of decades. And the problem is that as a company, they've been like the Xerox PARC of Washington State. They've been unable to take those inventions and turn them into products. And partly, ironically, it's because I think they're afraid to have failures. We're Microsoft. We have the world's largest operating system. We have this. We have Office. We're too important of a company to have public failures. Well, guess what? Android is now the #1 operating system, and Office is on the ropes unless they do something serious. And so I think Microsoft needs to take a page out of the Google book and start failing in public and be comfortable with that. They should take all this stuff that people like you and me say, hey, this is cool, throw it out there. Maybe it'll fail. Maybe it'll be a runaway success. But I don't think Microsoft has anything to lose at this point. I think their biggest certainty that they will be a loser is if they continue to withhold their great technology and never productize it.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree, Mike. The other thing with Microsoft, I think the challenge is every time they think of a product, they think about billions of dollars in revenue. And you look at this 3D imaging app that we're talking about here, you don't see billions of dollars of opportunity right off the bat. You look at it and you say, wow, that looks pretty neat. But to your point, if you put it out and you get the public using it, you have no idea how you might be able to monetize this thing down the road. So I think the billion-dollar factor is the thing that scares Microsoft off very often.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm sure that's true. Well, Google has filed a patent for a system to detect and report potholes in the road. The idea involves a vertical movement sensor that detects when a car hits a pothole. It then uploads that data into Google Maps, presumably, creating a road quality layer for maps. It's, of course, crowdsourced because many people using this product would identify the same pothole and it would reinforce. It'd be kind of like a version of Waze, which is a social app where people do multiple reports of various conditions on the highway and things that are going on, except this one would be automated because it would require no human involvement. Now, drivers would then be able to get directions that take potholes into consideration. In other words, give me a route that doesn't involve potholes. People are also speculating that it could help Google's fleet of driverless cars avoid pothole damage because, of course, they're pretty much glorified golf carts. We got some more news coming right up, but first let's talk about Gazelle. Gazelle is the best marketplace in the world for smartphones and tablets and things like that, and here's why. If you want a certain device, you can get it on Gazelle, and it'll be cheaper than what you would pay elsewhere. And you won't be able to tell, nor will anybody be able to tell, no one will be able to tell, that it isn't a device that you bought brand new, shrink-wrapped, right from the Apple Store or wherever it is you would buy a device. A certified like new category means that the phone has literally no indication that it has ever been used. There's another category that has that they call certified good. This shows general signs of wear, but of course the price drops even lower for certified good devices. And if you are both buying and selling your phones and your tablets on Gazelle, you're always going to end up with the latest and greatest, because essentially how this works is you have your old phone. Maybe it's not even that old. Maybe it's 6 months old or 8 months old or a year old. And then you sell it to Gazelle. Because it's not that old of a phone, you're going to get a great price for it, especially if you take care of it, put a case on it, make sure it doesn't get scratched up, make sure the screen doesn't get broken. You'll get a great price for it on Gazelle. And then you can take the money that they gave you buying that device from you, and you can spend it on a certified like new device from Gazelle. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, I don't know about getting a previously owned phone. That I feel more comfortable if I buy a new phone. Well, guess what? There's a risk-free, 30-day risk-free return policy. You can use it for weeks. And after 3-4 weeks, if you decide for whatever reason, any reason at all, that you don't want to keep it, just send it back and you pay nothing. I mean, there's literally no risk at all. And so there's no reason for you not to buy from Gazelle. There's no reason for you not to sell to Gazelle. Find out what your iPhone's worth. Take a minute and go to Gazelle.com to find out. And we thank Gazelle for their support of Tech News Today. Well, in news you can lose, a new exhibition by Dutch designer Richard Vijgen claims to reveal the invisible world of Wi-Fi and other radio waves that are flowing all around us all the time. It's called The Architecture of Radio, and it uses an iPad app for the visualization. It looks like it shows smartphone data traffic, GPS devices, Wi-Fi routers, cell towers, and even satellites in orbit. It also has some really cool sound effects. Here comes the video. Now, this is what I believe this is, Joe, is a simulated augmented reality app. So as if you move it around, it shows you what's really there. It shows you off in the distance. There's a cell tower, for example, 4 miles down the road. But I believe all that stuff was programmed into it. Still, you move it around and you're seeing what's actually in the environment.
It feels a little bit like Tron, doesn't it?
It does. That's why I like it. And there's like crazy sci-fi-ish like flickering and the waves of radio waves flying around that you can see, and there's stuff coming out of towers, and you can see satellites in the sky. It's really a cool visualization. This is not, I repeat, not a product that will let you actually see what radio waves are actually flying around. This is an art exhibition, and I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain that all of this was programmed in. So very cool. Kind of a neat thing to look at, even if it's not real. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Don Hancock, who posted this picture on Facebook. He watches Tech News Today while working as an IT manager at a major boatyard on the Gulf Coast in Atlanta. Don wrote that he's been following Leo and Patrick since Tech TV, and guess what? Patrick was actually the co-host on the most recent The New Screensavers, so you want to check that out. It's currently on the site. And he also said, I watch about a dozen Twitch shows a week. Can't recommend them enough, and I would agree with that, and thank you so much for that. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Joe Panettieri, thank you so much for co-anchoring today, and we will see you next week.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for always having me. It's always a joy. Take care.
The joy is all mine, Joe, I can assure you. All right, man. Have a good one. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Feedly. You can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. If you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, come on in and watch us as part of our studio audience. Send email to tickets@twit.tv before you come in. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechNewsTodayTV. You can follow me personally at elgan.com. Also, don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific every weeknight. And that is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Anthony Nielsen. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.